Hello. Once again, we are out there very early because of my self-loathing that forces me to not lay in bed and get a full 8 hours of sleep. Instead, we are out, which is honestly probably the best thing to do because it just forces you to artificial scarcity can be a good thing. So, hopefully, it's like the lighting's fine. But today, if the shorter time I talked about, because I'm not gonna do my full 1 hour set, my usual comedy routine, just because of time, and I need to walk to the Chinese grocery store to get some scallion pancakes and Chinese sausage before I run out. That's the only thing that enlightens the diet. But so today, what can we talk about? We can talk about Taylor Swift and some prediction markets. I may have put a slightly irresponsible amount of money on. Of course, the irony with it, with the Spotify stream markets, is that you put the money on generally before the song comes out, which naturally means that you don't know what the song is. It's kind of like the inverse of sports betting, where some people bet on their favorite team, or they bet against favorite teams to hedge. So you can slice and dice it whichever way. But you know what you're rooting for, or you know the substance, right? Like, you know the team. Whereas with Taylor Swift and that song Ophelia, I don't know. Do not really have much of any substance at all. So luckily the Ophelia one actually sounds like a pretty good pop song. But the other one, whichever one's at the end with Sabrina Carpenter, sounds doo-doo. And I'm sitting there with my strikes at 100 million Spotify streams by next Saturday. And all I can think is, well, shit. Because there was the Ed Sheeran market. I got absolutely hosed on that. I think I lost 50 on Ed Sheeran market for his new album last year. But at the same time, there was a Sabrina Carpenter single, right, that came out a couple months ago. And that one absolutely destroyed the charts. Like, that one got like 120 million streams in a week, And so I have a baseline, or I have selective memory for which markets I allow to cloud my judgment. Which again, just being cripplingly honest about my predilections. But if you, the viewer, or you feature me, can do anything to chip out, that'd be mightily helpful. And that's other things. Government shutdown. No, surely there's no way the government shutdown lasts longer than 40 days, right? That would frankly be quite unprecedented, just from the baseline. And then secondly, that is just a long time. I think the longest in a while has been 38 days. I think during Obama at some point. And that was actually abnormal. Back then. But they're selling 80 cents. They're selling dollars for 80 cents. Can't help but say, yes, please. Especially when there is some convexity to it, right? Where the event can just, where the actual outcome can just happen, and boom, you know, you get paid out. You don't, or in other words, you don't have a long tail, right? If you buy the Live Nation, well, Live Nation will be declared a monopoly by 2030, and you buy the No, right? Like, it's kind of no pull to par on when you get liquidity, right? Because the thing is, right, like, you don't have liquidity on some of these things. So there are multiple markets out there where I am the only guy who's bought strikes on the things. Of course, the question is then who's taking the other side, and the answer is, well, there's a market maker. Because they'll have a market maker to just help get things started. And then eventually, like, people will come in once they see volume. So, government shutdown stuff. Frankly, I wish I was a bit more plugged into the nuances of governance and bylaws and all that, because like there's real money to be had. For example, the big beautiful bill earlier this summer that getting passed, there's a market on when will it get passed by, you know. And so of course, like, it was looking bad at a point, but then of course it did happen before July, and you know, it was a big price delta, some big volatility on that, you know. Or the same when it comes to like, when will person be appointed for ambassador to X? Like, you need some understanding of congressional bylaws to understand the timing of it, how many opportunities is there to vote on somebody, you know. So, and again, because it is the government, like, the procedures are publicly available, but they are extremely boring and arcane and pretentious procedures. So I think I made a comment previously where I wish in high school I just spent my free time just being super dialed into Bulgarian football, or the Bulgarian second tier, because Dad actually has, you know, would have big material, or you can actually financialize that. Whereas, gosh, the other things, you know, a teenager spends one's time on aren't really monetizable, or leads to outsized nostalgic memories. The Chipotle line does call to me. And without working at Chipotle on the weekends, I wouldn't have my marginal economic ownership in Moelis and Company, my favorite boutique investment bank. So we shan't complain too much. Not sure how the camera looks. The video quality might be horrible, but again, back to the broader motif. This is where some of the top 10%. Let's not be too grandiose. Where some of the top 10% live, and they live in this built environment. There's a signal or something in that. Anyways, that is a lot of sounding smart today, but I haven't done my usual complaining about my usual roster of things I like to. I guess I didn't complain about prediction markets. Oh God, I'm gonna lose my my tail once again. My shirt, I should say. Very dreary and annoying. that's the outcome. But what can you do about that? I suppose in the previous video I made the point about wanting variance. It's like, here we go again. I have variance. I don't think many of the Swifties who are disappointed by the album, which doesn't seem to be my read of it, is that Taylor Swift fans aren't enthused by it. I don't know if it's that Travis Kelce line that's throwing everybody for a loop. Would be funny though. I'm not sure what the Rotten Tomatoes equivalent of for an album is. That'd be incredibly degenerate. It probably wouldn't make sense because of how subjective it is. What if the Rolling Stones says it's a 5 out of 5? I think so. Even if I've only listened to these songs I have money on. Anyways, I think today we'll get a readout, which should be helpful. And just seeing if I'm cooked. Seeing if I'm cooked or not. But hopefully not. We will see. Yeah, there's a great line somewhere. I hope this is profitable. I think it'll be profitable. I hope it is profitable. Ain't that the right mindset? I hope it will work out. Speaking of such, this is back to complain about my favorite topic. So it turns out I made a huge mistake, and I really should have internalized Creative Writing 101, which is you have to speak in active voice. You can't use passive voice. Passive voice in writing is bad. You know, the thing came to him. The past arrived at his feet. Versus he grasped the incoming projectile. I think I might have misused active voice versus passive voice. Oh, there's some estate here, but yeah. So point is very like I'm butchering the actual grammar of active versus passive voice, but conceptually, or it's like, are you the actor, or are you the receiver, the passive entity? And you know, in writing, right, like there's a big difference, right? I don't think Stephen King or Dostoevsky. Oh, that is horrible. Saying Stephen King as the first writer. I was thinking about it because of The Long Walk. That was a good book. Of course, they made a movie about it, which I did make money on that prediction market. But it's a good book. It is a very simple concept, but the hook does work. It's not overly heavy-handed. You know. But anyways, so in general, right, you can write in active voice versus passive voice. And I had to misfortune, and so, dating apps, yeah, again, you saw where this was coming. You saw where I was going with this, Me and my AI slop training algorithm. Anyways, okay, so I presume future me will have some recollection of this, given how it's marginally, or it's much more interesting than my median, or or it's certainly the mode uh, dating app story. I get it, right? The point is not that dating apps are good, or you should expect. I expect this to lead to anything, but it is. If there's a difference between zero and something, right? There's a difference between buying the lottery ticket and not buying the lottery ticket, in that it's an infinitesimally small difference, but the difference from zero to something is, you could say, infinite, or is big. I do suspect there is probably some proof against that logic, but I am not that smart. Hence, I'm not at Jane Street wearing sweatpants all day. But yeah, so we have that. So all of that is to say, nothing I say is meant to be taken that seriously, unless of course it's a great outcome or you are impressed by it, which in which case I very sincerely meant what I said, and you should respect me and give me the benefit of the doubt. As a quick aside, I think the video will look better than what I'm actually seeing, because I think DJI and their ingenious engineering with video quality, or the lens, does a great job seizing the light. Security camera on the house must mean something. Okay, I've never actually walked down this far. As you can see, it's not very interesting. No, it is not. But again, where you can see the type you can see the vibe of the place, right? Is that a Palestine flag? Would that be for DC? For the Bethesda? That'd be bizarre. Nope, it's a it is a pride flag. Well, almost got there. Does the sidewalk end? Ugh, yes it does. Do I really want to walk down a non-sidewalk thing? Maybe. But probably not. Oh, again, I do think that we saw one person once we left the metro stop. So, but anyways, back to the good old thing, right? So, anyways, this girl, she had one of those good old, like, I'm interested in these three things, that type of prompt. And one of them was Mark Andreessen. Or it's like, I'm a fan of Nicolae Ceausescu, the Romanian fellow, some philosopher type, and then Mark Andreessen. So I cunningly had the charming response of the Egghead Man. And then she said something along the lines of, yes, I'm building Mega Hitler app, and he's funding the Series A. Which I thought, Mars, at the very least, right, it's more finance inclined, and it's different than some of the extreme generic. Like, it makes sense, right? Like, there's no need to have to show a personality and risk any of the downsides from demonstrating personality when it's so asymmetrically tilted in your favor from schmucks like myself. And yeah, so again, so okay, so she responded. That is, does not happen every day, does it? No, sir. No, ma'am. So from that, what do you have to do? You need to think. So again, right? Like you need, like, the odds are, right? I guess by definition, right? Like, she is not the one who liked your profile. Right? You're the one who liked her profile. Therefore, that kind of shows the asymmetry that's already baked in. So what you need to do conceptually is to keep the ball rolling. You can't really count on the other person to latch on, can you? So you have that element should always be in the back of your mind. That you need to progress the ball. You need to have conviction. And okay, that part was BS, but but again, the point is, like, you can't, like, you need to be proactive, especially if you're a schmuck like me. And so I think I said something, or typed something along the lines of, well, that doesn't sound like American dynamism. Insert laugh track. And then her profile says that she works on the Hill. So I'm like, maybe you work in policy? I don't know. It's not the great question, asking about work, but it is something. So that doesn't sound like American dynamism. Send. Do you work in policy on the Hill? Send. Wait for a response. Now it asks. Now looky here. Looky here at some deer. Well, I'm afraid the deer don't respect the stay off the lawn signs, but what can you do? The true terrorists of the DMV, destroying the lawns. Alas. But anyways, that's what I sent. She sends a response, no, I am indefinitely unemployed. Just, that is an answer. It's not not overly specific. Not a whole lot to work with there, right? However, it does show the true misogyny of the world. Where being unemployed, it's not a big concern. It doesn't move the needle per se in my head. But it's like, how do I work with that? In my head, the gears are going off. Okay, we did a 1-2-1-2. We have a volley going on. Fuck that end. Not quite. So we have a volley going on, yeah? Let's see. Oh, that's fuck it. Oh, we could walk this trail, but I would instead prefer to walk past single family housing. But anyway, so we have it. So in my head, it's like crap. How do I answer to this? How do I engage with that? I don't know. On a profile, and then of course you do the smart thing, right? Right, gents? You see the context that's provided, and then it says likes or won't shut up about Russian literature. And it's like, well, not that I read a lot of Tolstoy or Dostoevsky, but I do know War and Peace. And I do know it's a big book. Don't ask me about any details. I suppose I do know about the Napoleonic setting, but anyways, that was my line. Okay, so she's somewhat into tech or startups. She likes Russian literature. Let's pander. Let's do the best thing a guy could ever do, and just pander. Well, cracks fingers. Well, if you ever want to grab a coffee and chat about startups, or excuse me, well, if you, I just say well, so we'll get back to how in retrospect this was horrible. I do have a conundrum to face. I literally, I just suppose if I was a real content creator, I would show you the chat, but I'll do a live stream because you can use an emulator, because Hinge doesn't have a web browser app the way Tinder does. But what you can do, you could download an emulator, and that way you can use it on your desktop. So it is fun. Again, it's kind of like, you have to be professional about this. You gotta, the same way you don't use a spreadsheet on your phone, right? You have to show standards when you're sending witty one-liners to people. So maybe we can do that. That'd be deeply embarrassing once again, but anything for the content. Anyways, so something along the lines of, well, shit. Was it? Well, if you ever want to grab a coffee and talk about privacies, AI, startups, it seemed like, she's somewhat into tech. Maybe she'd have an opinion. Okay, and the sun's out, so I think the camera work will be excellent. So if you ever want to talk about privacies, AI, and privacy startups, let me know. Or gosh, this shows how complex of a sentence I put together. Well, if you ever want to talk about privacies, AI, and privacies startups, or War and Peace, let me know. Send. Little did I, or immediately in retrospect, it's like, well, crap, that is not active voice. Well, if you want to, oh my gosh, what have I done? What is she, a running back? Like, man, it is probably the one thing that pickup artist discourse has accurately identified. Out of all of the slop that pickup artists say, the one, again, I have not consumed much pickup artist content, because of course all the good stuff is paywalled naturally. Out of principle, I refuse to do so. I'll take that back. There is free pickup artist content. It does generally turn out into slop though, or I don't know if it was so formulaic. Why is male virginity on the rise? Yeah. Not that I would know. Well, enough said about that. But so I think in retrospect, right, that is passive voice. Yeah. Do you like? I'm explicitly leaving it up to her. Right? Like, so again, I don't know if that's too simple a frame, but like someone a friend of mine who was a woman made the comment that on a profile you kind of want to effectively have as many fishing lines out of things that she could latch onto and be like, well, I like doing that. I like that. Therefore, I can see myself doing that with this guy, which is so cynical of in my view, or it's like you're literally just like spamming things that are somewhat female coded. Like, I've done I've done more shameless things in my life, and I haven't really taken that feedback out of arrogance and pride. My great enemy. Yeah, sometimes the Buddhists are onto something, right? If I didn't care about such, if I didn't seek to improve my lot in life, I would probably be a happier fellow. But I wouldn't be me. I kind of like being me, despite my many flaws and clearly some disadvantages in life, and that flips camera to selfie mode. Anyways, so about that. But so in retrospect, what I should have done, frankly, was again active voice, right? Like you want to make it easy to elicit a response, loosely speaking. So if you want to make it easy to elicit a response, I should have said have been, do you want to grab a coffee and talk about parentheses AI and parentheses startups or War and Peace? Make it explicit, no, as I do like to say, right? Oh, well, look at that. Slightly modern Mustang, right? But just like, say what you mean, right? Like, I don't know. I have zero ulterior motives, somewhat sincerely, beyond just switching up the weekly routine and grabbing coffee. If I wanted to be funny, I could say, like, I am happy to convert some of my sweat equity to pay for 2 coffees. That is, I'm kind of fishing in that direction anyways. So again, very like, if you've debased yourself already so much, then not much benefit is there from trying to hold on to your pride. So we'll see if any we'll see if the pandering works, can't say. I will say in general, like, it is, I do suppose if the point from the last conversation about dating apps was that it is just so lopsided in like how much attention the average girl gets versus not, right? It is just so asymmetric. So functionally, it is just a fight for attention, right? If it's a fight for her attention, then you kind of have to make it easy for them to give you attention. And the way to get attention, again, it's literally writing 101 or creative writing 101. Use active voice. Well, crap. Frankly, I will say one of my broader points, if I'm ever a parent, a dad, like how I will motivate my kid, I just suppose this is male coded. Again, perpetualized male bias or whatever. What do you think conceptually? I think the stats show it. Is that right? Like the more like the AP classes, the honors classes, the more academically gifted classes, there tends to be more like more girls in those classes as a percentage, generally speaking. You know, like I don't know, like that is clearly, yeah. Like, come on, like, do you want to be in the basic math class, where I just like bonking pencils and you're stuck with a bunch of guys? As a fun comment, it is fun to see how much crime do we witness on these walks. Some crime, I suspect, as we just saw, but nothing too material, eh? But that is how I would motivate my kid, you know. Is it too early for Halloween decorations? It is October. I do suppose if your neighbor puts one up, you're compelled to put one up also. Oh, that's nice. That's a nice, vague apartment-looking house right there. You know, nice low-story, 2-story apartment building. Some nice density. You know, is that a bad word? But yeah, that's how I motivate my kid. You're like, come on, Bucko. And again, if conceptually, like a big part to attractiveness is that a Vespa? Frankly, you'd think you see more Vespas given how nice or the utility they offer. But conceptually, right, like if one of the building blocks of attraction can loosely be viewed as just proximity, like, then there is no downside to being in the gifted class. You know, you have like the very blunt way where, you know, it sets you up for a better career and your college, and therefore, you know, women don't really date down per se when it comes to education level or income. Therefore, you kind of maximize your opportunity set. I don't know. To me, like, yeah. Maybe young me implicitly understood that. Although the young me would be very disappointed at the lack of output from the inputs, to use the Turner phrase. But alas. So we do have that component. But yeah. So now my predicament is, so I think we've established that I did use passive voice. I think we can all agree that I kind of deserve what I get. Or more accurately, I deserve what I do not get. Which is a response or an opportunity to buy 2 coffees at some DC establishment. Well, and now my predicament is, well, do I edit this? How do I reclaim the situation? Now, one frame of mind is you could be, well, it's clearly if she didn't respond, she kind of showed her choice, and you don't want to. What is this? Is there best practice? Leaf best. I just suppose that's actually a real thing that you do need to do. Leaf education. That's nice. That's actually, yeah, it's pretty charming. Gosh. What was the point? So, okay, so one view is Well, she already clearly made her call. No, I don't want to interrupt her day. I don't want to annoy her, and that is a valid view. And the point, and or someone's pointed out to me, you know, like there is an asymmetry, right? At least for your personal outcome, right? It's like, you know, grab coffee with a gal, or don't grab coffee with a gal. Like from the nothing state, the null state, to the alternate state. I don't know. there is some difference between the two. I will say this is actually a very funny part of the wall because you see like standard housing, fancy or postmodern housing, and in like 2 minutes you'll see Bethesda high-rise stuff, or the more dense stuff part. Yeah, I swore we saw something like that at Teal's humble estate. So yeah, so pretty much like the conclusion is that you should kind of, it's going to sound bad, but you should be less considerate effectively, is the implication, you know, because in the grand scheme of things, like, it's a very quick ignore for her, just say no if it's in person or whatever, but for you, it could be, you know, much better. And again, right, like, no one's, like, the inverse of someone coming to you is likely not going to be the case. So therefore, you should just have to be much more risk-seeking and, like, again. So here's the point, right? Like, single-family housing. It's not a high-rise, but actually, I don't know. Just a very charming quirk of Maryland's DC suburbs. So that's the takeaway. Like, so how do I salvage the situation from here? I don't know. And so something I was thinking was, I could do edits and then just rephrase it using active voice. Do you want? I can literally say edit to use active voice. Do you want to grab a coffee and talk about, and then, you know, the same parentheses AI and parentheses. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, just out of arrogance, I would find that amusing. Like, so someone made a joke that the biggest. That is a big house. Oh, it's a school. Wow. But some made a joke where, like, the biggest womanizers are somewhat misogynistic or sexist. I do suppose to some degree, if you are a true womanizer, that does show some level of disrespect to women to some degree. Of course, if you flip that, so what is the opposite of womanizer? Now we're getting a bit close to home, but yeah, what can you do? I'm not sure if the inverse is really applicable, but what can you do? But in my head, I think that's a good way to build my way out of the hole I've created. And we'll see if it works. Again, probably not, but again, it's all for my amusement, nonetheless. And frankly, that's what matters. That's what matters, eh? My amusement. Not hers, mine. And frankly, you know, that is kind of, I don't know, that is the setup, quite literally. So who's to argue against that? So pretty much I spent 20 minutes talking about Taylor Swift and prediction markets in order to spend 20 minutes talking about what I truly wanted to rant about. Which just shows the... Actually, I didn't do a face reveal. It's too chilly now in the mornings to not just wear a soccer jersey, unfortunately. So my enthusiasm for these vanity videos has slightly gone down. Although, oh my gosh, I could have beat that. But instead, hair is pretty messed up. Alas. Well, what can you do? Or frankly, it's part of the charm, eh? The messed up hair is part of the fun. But anyways, yeah. Again, right? So again, with the good old face thing, you know. Again, I possess some self-awareness.